Joseph II was born in 1741, the eldest son of Maria Theresa and Francis of Lorraine. Joseph ruled as co-regent with his mother starting in 1765. Following his father, Joseph became the Holy Roman Emperor. After the death of his mother in 1780, Joseph gained all the power in the empire. Joseph was a ruler in a hurry. Throughout his rule, he tried to reform the empire.
For example, Joseph centralized the state, which involved allotting all political decision-making power from locals to the royal councils. Additionally, he created uniformity by treating all social and legal classes alike in law and administration. Joseph disliked the independent power of the Catholic Church and was a big promoter of religious tolerance. He was very against religious persecution and, as such, modified the power of various religious groups. Further, he abolished serfdom and created a single unified land tax for all landowning subjects. As well, he greatly reduced the death penalty to fit with the laws that he modified.
Joseph II was not an absolute monarch. Although he meets all of the criteria in Luke's pyramid, he ruled as co-regent with his mother for more than half of his time in power. His mother refused to grant Joseph authority throughout their rule together as co-regents. His mother was very strict and gave Joseph little room to reform the empire while they were working together. So although together they met all of the criteria in the pyramid, in reality, Joseph did not have any of these powers as his mother held them all for much of his rule. By the end of his rule, his subjects were revolting and taking away aspects of his power. Further, Joseph II was not an enlightened ruler. According to Hobbes, people should give their power to the enlightened monarch because it is in their best interests. However, Joseph did not gain the power from the members of his empire for this reason. Although he was technically elected into the position, he really inherited the position by being the eldest son of the two previous rulers. Especially since his empire was so vast, all the citizens did not likely willingly give up power. Further, Joseph did not have all of the power. Although he took power from the locals, he gave it to a royal council, so he was giving them power as well. Moreover, according to Rousseau, people should submit themselves to the general will, and in return will become an indivisible part of the whole. The general will should act on behalf of the people who have given them power. Joseph made impulsive reforms during his rule because he became obsessed with the idea of enlightenment. However, his motives were not entirely sincere. He fought with his mother throughout their reign together and did not appreciate that she gave him little freedoms. When he became ruler, he rebelled against his mother's strictness by forcing enlightenment onto the empire. In fact, his mother originally gave him power following his father's death, but she was forced out of retirement by courtiers, nobles, and clergies who did not agree with Joseph's ideas. He did not act as the general will. The Belgians started a revolt in 1789 that left them independent of Joseph in 1790. Tax reforms of 1789 upset Hungarian nobles, and they already disliked Joseph's reform. Joseph also had upset the subjects in Bohemia and Transylvania. Many peasants did not like that Joseph did not give them the land they had earned as serfs. By the end of his reign, he had little support from his empire. On January 30th, 1970, Joseph signed a decree that formally withdrew his reforms. People hardly noticed a few weeks later when he died, February 20th, 1790. According to Kant, enlightened rulers should allow for people to make public of their reason. However, privately, in their work, people should obey the conventions the ruler put in place. Joseph did let people have their own ideas. He practiced religious tolerance and even let people come to him in front of an audience to share their problems. He reduced the censorship in the media and let scholars, journalists, and writers publish their ideas, as long as they were not too immoral or too mystically religious. Joseph, however, did close many monasteries, ultimately about 700 of them. This discouraged the practices of the monasteries and the people who followed the monks. Further, as previously mentioned, in the end, people did not obey Joseph and revolted against him. Joseph, therefore, although he was obsessed with being enlightened, was not enlightened as a ruler by the definitions put forth by Hobbes, Rousseau, or Kant.
Joseph II was an absolute monarch. Everything he did fit with Luke's aspects of power. First, Joseph was legitimate. He was the son of Maria Theresa, who he succeeded in ruling, which was consistent with the times. Further, his father was the Holy Roman Emperor. There is no question that Joseph too was entitled to the throne. Secondly, he had executive power. Though he began ruling with his mother, when she died, he quickly took Austrian affairs into his own hands. He acted quickly and efficiently, and, as all social and legal classes were uniformly below him, had full veto power. Next, he had coercive power. Not only was Joseph a supporter of the military, which he fully controlled, he nationalized the judicial system, restricted manorial and municipal court jurisdiction, and put these courts under closer governmental scrutiny, and established courts of appeal which were uniform throughout his lands. He reformed all courts to fit his control. In 1778, Joseph attempted to take advantage of the fact the ruling family of Bavaria, the House of Wittelsbach, had died out, and sent in the Austrian troops to try and seize Bavaria. He also had legislative power. In his lifetime, Joseph implemented thousands of reforms, up to 600 each year. Despite Austrian nobles occasionally taking issue, Joseph acted for the people and insisted on reforming the empire. He rarely summoned his council to aid him in making legislative decisions. Joseph also had economic power. Joseph was most careful with economics. He acted to improve the Austrian economy and, in doing so, the state as a whole. By abolishing serfdom, or turning peasants from patrimonial to royal subjects, and creating a single tax on land as opposed to an extensive tax structure, he changed the empire's economy and the financial structure of many of his people, to the dismay of many Austrian noblemen. Joseph was considered a ruler in a hurry and rarely called upon his full council to make amendments. He had ministers in place to assist him, yet he ran solely on his own schedule in his own time and therefore set the agenda. Joseph was also very conscious. His primary concern as a ruler was to better the Habsburg state. He ruled entirely for the people and worked long hours each day at a fast pace to aid them in every way he could think of. More than being absolute, though, Joseph was also enlightened. Joseph put services in place for his people and tried to be the best ruler he could be, but also needed absolute power to do so. Everything Joseph did, he did for the people. In particular, his religious tolerance made him most enlightened, at least through Hobbes's model. By taking away power from the coercive Catholic Church and equalizing all religions, despite the fact that he was a devout Catholic, he not only stayed absolute, but created something of a social contract to protect subjects of all faiths. Further, in removing serfdom, he took power away from his richer subjects, but in doing so, freed thousands of peasants. Joseph emulated the general will, as Rousseau talked about. His religious tolerance, implementation of state schools, legal and social uniformity, and extensive efforts to strengthen the state speak to what is best for society. Because Joseph was absolute, the people were giving themselves to him. As his reforms and projects proved that he indeed knew what was best for society, he was the general will, and thus his citizens fit Rousseau's model of putting in common their person and their whole power under the supreme direction of the general will, and in return they receive every member as an individual part of the whole. In this case, the whole was the state, and Joseph's ideas made it indivisible. Joseph's laws and commands were a general representation of what the people wanted, despite the displeasure that many of his amendments brought to the noblemen. As the vast majority of his subjects were not wealthy or powerful, his reforms spoke to what they wanted and needed. Joseph was not forceful or tyrannical, and though he was an absolute power, his reforms were not put in place to intimidate majorities. In 1787, Joseph refined the criminal code and reduced the list of crimes to which the death penalty applied in an attempt to unify the state and remove hostility and unnecessary intimidation. Joseph was the strong and enlightened monarch that Kant believed led to freedom.
The peasants are starving? Let them eat cake!